Hey y'all, it's Lainey Wilson. St. Jude gives kids with cancer the chance they deserve. Families never receive a bill from St. Jude for treatment, travel, housing, or food. But we can't help these kids without you.
This holiday, help St. Jude find more cures for more children. Donate now at musicgives.org.
Good afternoon. We're getting right down to business here, doing it live, doing more at 4 weekday afternoons, live on the air. Mottek On Money, 790 KBC, streaming live online worldwide at kbc.com and the on-demand Mottek On Money podcast, kbc.com, Apple, iTunes, YouTube, all your favorite podcast platforms. Stocks kicking off the week with a pullback. The stocks moving lower as investors wait for the November jobs report. This is the delayed report that's supposed to come out first thing tomorrow morning. We'll also be getting some other economic tidbits this week. Bitcoin plunging again to around 86,000. Gold trimming gains today, but still within striking distance of its all-time high, hovering at around $4,300 an ounce, about $100 off the October high. Silver also at or near all-time highs today, up around $64 an ounce. Platinum, by the way, also on the rise, above $1,800. The U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics tomorrow will release its long-awaited combined employment reports for October and November. Some key details, though, will be missing due to the government shutdown preventing data collection. Among other things, the longest shutdown in U.S. history forced the Bureau of Labor Statistics to cancel the release of October's Consumer Price Index report. It's not clear now what components of the October CPI will be available when the report for November is published on Thursday. In all this, the Dow coming in for a closing loss of 41 points at 48,416. The S&P 500 down 11 at 6,817. The NASDAQ down 137 at 23,057. The yield in the 10-year note is back up to 4.18%. The volatility index spiking today at 5%. Tesla hitting record highs today at more than $16 at $475 and change. Looks like Tesla hit a record high today before dipping slightly below that level after Tesla bull Dan Ives of Wedbush, a frequent guest on this program, wrote that the autonomous chapter has begun for Tesla. Tesla shares ending at 475.31, got as high as 479.86 before pulling back. Tech stocks extending their slide today on concerns about AI bubble talk. Many strategists see the rotation as positive, a sign of broadening in support for stocks from narrow tech leadership. Despite all the bubble talk, UBS strategists say they see no evidence of an AI bubble as concerns over valuation and AI have weighed on tech stocks recently. We'll be talking more about that coming up very shortly. What else is happening? Well, a lot of speculation as who's going to be replacing Fed Chairman Jerome Powell when his term ends in May. The president has called for aggressively lower interest rates. We did see the Fed lower rates last week. Kevin Hassett appears to be the front runner. Kevin Warsh also in contention. Over the weekend, Hassett said policymakers would consider President Trump's opinions if he were chosen, but would remain independent in setting actual short-term benchmark rates. Ford, making news today, says it's taking a $19.5 billion charge as it refocuses on hybrids, slashes its EV investments, and discontinues the electric F-150 pickup truck. Ford says its actions are as a result of slower-than-expected EV adoption rates. Heavy hearts around the world as Hanukkah begins following the horrific anti-Semitic attack in Australia over the weekend. 15 people were killed when two gunmen targeted Jewish people attending a Hanukkah event. The victims include a 10-year-old girl, a British-born rabbi, a retired police officer, as well as a Holocaust survivor. Meanwhile, the effort continues to stamp out anti-Semitism here in California after an appalling incident last week in which we saw an event disrupted at the Wilshire Boulevard Temple on Wilshire Boulevard. Meanwhile, a few more California colleges have settled anti-Semitic complaints. Coming up later this hour, Rabbi Abraham Cooper, Associate Dean and Director of Global Social Action for the Simon Wiesenthal Center and Museum of Tolerance in West Los Angeles, will be joining me live. But first, on your money, the markets, the economy, crypto, precious metals, and the whole works now. Joining us live now is Ken Winans, top-ranked money manager Ken Winans, President and Chief Investment Officer at Winans Investments at winansinvestments.com. Ken Winans is the author of numerous books, including Investment Atlas 3, Creating Wealth Using Historical Trends. He also has his crypto credentials. He's also host of the Winning with Winans radio show and podcast in the Las Vegas area, and host of the Winans Wealth Minute features right here on your favorite station, 790 KBC. Ken Winans, thank you very much for taking the call here this afternoon.
Frank, Mottek, we're almost through this crazy year that you and I have been talking all through. And, you know, what you just had in your news brief before this was just a good example of what I think we're going to see throughout the rest of this week. There's going to be some positive news. There's going to be news that might surprise some people. I don't think most people honestly thought that you'd have Tesla where it is at right now and Ford doing what it's doing. So I think, you know, it's the zigging and zagging. It's this, you know, just trying to figure out how to position things. But with all that being said, we all have to remember a couple of things. Number one, I can probably count on one hand the number of times that I've seen December end badly. And I know that right now I've been having a lot of talk with people about tax loss selling, certainly rebalancing portfolio. That's number one. And number two, I am in the camp that 2026 is going to be very different in stock market and in, I'm going to say, investment leadership across the board. And what I mean by that is with the focus on rates coming down, not if they're coming down, it's now how much they're going to be coming down. And as you talked about, situation with the Federal Reserve changes the leadership there. And I think what's far more important is that the relationship between the Federal Reserve and the Treasury Department will be much more copacetic. So with all that, I think that we might be real surprised to see who's leading the show next year. And it might be some names that we haven't even discussed in a while.
All right. Silver certainly been leading the show lately in the precious metals, hitting at record highs, blowing past 50 and now past 60 and now above $64 an ounce. Ken Winans, I keep hearing that Burl Ives song, Silver and Gold, and that seems to be the big winners this year, silver and gold, hitting record highs as well.
And you know what's so funny, Frank, and I think, again, it's also it's a testament to just how really as strong I think the economy actually is. When you look at the reports coming from the jeweler retailers or even jewelry sales at Costco or jewelry sales on Amazon, at least what I'm looking at is they're saying that there's been very strong demand for jewelry. I think, again, it goes to show that even with the higher prices and momentum begets momentum, it drives things higher, but people are certainly not afraid to spend money on metals. I will just say one thing. I've had a lot of talk, especially some of the audience here. You know, there's a tendency, a knee-jerk tendency, to want to rush out and buy things like silver coins or silver bars. And before you do that, you really do need to deal with some people who know what they're dealing with there, because you can, in fact, overpay for a lot of this stuff in markup. So I just caution our audience, be very, very careful if you decide it's time to start jumping into some of these areas that you have not ever really done before.
All right, looks like there's a sale going on in the crypto world, right? Bitcoin back to around 86,000. It's been a rough weekend again for the crypto folks. 86K for Bitcoin, Ethereum back below 3,000, and Doge, which we quote here, down to around 12 cents. Give us your thoughts here on what's happening in crypto land.
You know, there were an awful lot of people who crowded into crypto at much higher prices than what we are looking at today. I think it's very similar to what happens to stocks that have had a challenging year, or for that matter, any other kind of investment. I actually think there's some tax loss selling going on right now in crypto land, and which means that the pressure will be on for the next, you know, we're functionally looking at, 7 trading days left for the remainder of this year. And then January, it's basically all control delete, reset everything, and we'll see where we go from there. You know, it's not, I mean, I know it's frustrating for people who committed money into crypto. I certainly had a lot of clients who said I was going to finally put my toe in the water, and this happened. Well, you know what? This typically does happen on new things. What I would say is this, you know, if you're going to commit to this area of investment, you need to be prepared for the volatility. And it doesn't necessarily mean you rush out and just grab at anything, but you should back through and say, hey, it's pulled back off of its highs. If I think it's going to recover here, maybe, you know, that guy Ken Winans is right. First part of January, I should step in and start buying it. But more important than that, it's a good time during the holidays to look at your portfolio, make those necessary adjustments, and move forward.
The show, of course, is news-driven, and like I said at the beginning here, hearts are very heavy as Hanukkah begins, and The holiday season continues following that horrible attack in Australia. And then here in Los Angeles today, federal authorities announced the arrest of 4 alleged members of an extremist group, anti-capitalist group, among other things, who were suspected of planning coordinated bombing attacks on New Year's Eve across Southern California. We'll be talking more about that with Bobby CHACON, a veteran FBI special agent, and about this. What about security issues and security companies? It appears there's going to be a new tremendous demand for their work.
You know, it's actually interesting. I've been hearing from people. I mean, again, I live in Las Vegas. Nevada is an open carry state, and you do have people saying that for Christmas they want to buy a gun. I think that's a very common tale. Now, you can't just rush out and not go through the proper permitting process. But I will tell you, Frank Mottek, I was just at a luncheon, a Las Vegas Chamber of Commerce lunch, year-end, holiday. Security was very tight, and this is actually before the tragedies. But I think it's safe to say we're going to find that across the board everywhere you go. But security companies themselves, I think it's not just tied to personal security, but it's also property security. In fact, a good example, talking about people stockpiling gold and silver in vaults in their homes. Well, that's going to require security. So all these things have a way of spilling over into areas that you might not think about. But no, I think it's I hate to say it, but it's just that's the holiday season, is that there are evildoers out there that use it as a time to try to make a point. It's just my heart. And I also, I know that a lot of people in Nevada and certainly Las Vegas are of the Jewish faith, and it's heartfelt, not just in California, but regionally and nationwide.
Certainly. And as far as the military situation and defense names, we're watching carefully what's happening in the Caribbean with the U.S. and Venezuela locking horns, and the U.S. getting aggressive against Venezuelan drug activity and so forth, and the possibility of some additional military action there. What's catching your attention in that space?
What's interesting? Well, first off, anything in defense, and I've been a longtime supporter of the defense stocks all through this year. They've honestly just been on a tear. And it was actually even before the election, they were moving up. But Frank, what is interesting for anybody who does go up and down the 15 and go by Barstow, I mean, one thing that caught my eye the last time I drove that, they're moving the tanks out. I mean, the tanks and the self-propelled artillery pieces, they're all heading east. Now, I have no special knowledge on this, but it costs a lot of money to move that equipment around. So here's my point. It's not just the defense makers, it's the logistics companies as well. When you look at rail companies, truck companies, all those kind of transportation plays are also a military play. So I think it's another reason why transportation stocks seem to be on the rebound through much of this, really since this geopolitical stuff has started.
That's very interesting. In the meantime, in all this, oil is moving lower, down to around 56 and change here. Ken, Winans oil has come down significantly. You've probably noticed a big difference in gas prices where you are there in Las Vegas now, and the rest of the country. Here in California, of course, we're still paying the highest prices around the nation. What about gas and oil prices? Where do you see those go, and what do you think about the oil stocks from an investment standpoint?
Well, and Frank, it's interesting because when in the commodity world we call it the energy complex, and that means that we look at natural gas, light crude, and another thing called, but certainly gasoline prices, which we call RBOB, and then of course we also have a thing out on the East Coast. Anybody who's from there knows about heating oil. What's interesting is you're having a shifting around right now, and it certainly the weather back east has starting to get pretty ugly. Many people are beginning to believe that maybe this winter is going to be worse than many people thought. With that being said, a lot of focus is right now on natural gas and certainly on heating oil. So and people this time of year, yes, there is some driving in the holiday, but also gas prices are traditionally not moving and spiking at new highs in the month of December. It's usually when you get into the next vacation part of the year, which is going to be next spring. But no, it's yes, part of it is, and that's why I don't think the inflation numbers are going to be nearly as bad as some of the naysayers say they're going to be. When you have light crude dropping in price, a whole basket of physical commodities that are going down. I know that the people against my view would say, well, look at gold and look at silver. I would counter that with, that is legitimate demand. That is not an inflation play. That's people want gold and silver. For a matter of fact, a lot of those new AI chips need a lot of metals in them. So there's a different play here. But no, I think that it's a good sign for those that are concerned about inflation. It's funny, I was at an event this weekend. There were people at this event who are in the Texas oil business, and they pretty much said the same thing. It's a seasonal thing, but they are concerned that there's not an increase in demand going into next year because we're right now near their production costs, and that's not good in the long term for the energy sector.
On there live with top-ranked money manager Ken Winans. At this point, Ken, let me ask you the big question here. Any specific places where you're putting money now and or taking it off the table?
I am so glad you're asking me that, Frank, because let me ask you a question. When was the last time you talked to anybody about preferred stocks?
Probably with you was the last time.
Okay, well, here's some good news for folks out there. Everybody's looking for something that might be a reasonably good price, and they're nervous about things. There's a lot of people want to shift into income. And I was looking at preferred stocks, which are high dividend types of equities. And I was really surprised to see that, number one, they haven't really bounced back with the drop in interest rates as much as corporate bonds have. And let me just throw some names out. You mentioned Ford earlier with this big readjustment that they're doing. Ford has 3 preferred stocks. They are yielding annual dividend yields. And by the way, with qualified dividend preferential treatment, which means tax at capital gains rates for many people, they're yielding 7.5% annually. So there's Ford. For those of you who are looking for a real estate play, a lot of people think that, retailers are going to be starting to restock things up. Malls are going to be starting to get strong again in certain parts of the country. Go check out Kimco Realty, one of the largest owners of malls in the country. They have preferreds out there that are paying 6.7%. And then good old-fashioned utilities, still one of my favorite plays for the whole year. They've been on a tear. The common utility stocks are now yielding about 3.5%. That's a little light. But here's DTE Energy, which we better know as Detroit Energy, has 2 preferreds that are paying 6.5%. So those are my stocking stuffers, Frank Mottek. That's what I stick in the stocking right now.
All right. Is Santa Claus still going to show up, or is it going to be the Grinch this time around?
You know what? I think the market's going to continue moving higher. I mean, I think there are people that are worried about the fact that cash levels are just, maybe a few have too much cash in their portfolio. They think it's going to be a positive January, which I happen to be in that camp, and they're beginning to make rebalancing moves. But again, they're in stocks like preferred shares. They're not necessarily going into AI. So I think the rebalancing is starting now, Frank.
Terrific, Ken. Thank you very much for taking the call. We wish you and everyone there a wonderful holiday season and look forward to speaking with you again very soon, Ken. Thank you very much for joining us live here this afternoon.
Thank you, Frank. Take care.
Ken Winans, top-ranked money manager, president and chief investment officer, Winans Investments at winansinvestments.com. Live with us here on Mottek On Money on 790 KBC. Happy holidays, and silver and gold back in the spotlight today with gold near its all-time high, right now hovering at around $4,336 an ounce. Silver popping above $64 an ounce today at $64.14. Platinum at $1,816 and change. The overall stock market pulling back today with the Dow down 41 points at 48,416. The S&P 500 down 11 at 6,817, both still near record highs. NASDAQ down 137 at 23,057. The yield of the 10-year note at 4.18%. The volatility index spiking today up 5%. Oil lower, right now hovering at around $56.65 a barrel. Crypto's taking another hit today. Right now, Bitcoin just above 86,000. ETH, Ethereum at 29.59. Solana at 127, and Doge at the moment at 12 cents. Tesla hitting record highs, kissing record highs up around 479, closing up about $16 at 475.31. Nvidia rebounding today up $1.27 at 176 and change. Oracle taking a hit down about 5 to 184 and change. Strategy down more than $14 at 162.08.
Looking for the perfect gift for the soccer fan in your life? Visit store.ussoccer.com and shop official U.S. Soccer merch. Celebrate the season and show your U.S. Soccer fandom with a gift from store.ussoccer.com.
Get ready for The Rush with Max Crosby.
You already know what time it is.
All-pro defensive end Max Crosby takes you beyond the field with exclusive insights, real stories from inside the locker room.
You could literally see us laughing, kind of chirping back and forth.
This is The Rush. Buckle up.
We talk about The Rush on The Rush all the time.
Don't miss the behind-the-scenes moments and interviews everyone's talking about.
And we appreciate you guys. We're going to keep feeding you all the content.
Follow and listen on your favorite platform.
Here we go.
Mottek On Money continues here in 790 KABC. Big news this morning, a big announcement by federal authorities announcing they disrupted a credible terrorist threat, arresting 4 alleged members of a radical pro-Palestinian extremist group accused of planning coordinated New Year's Eve bombings here in the Los Angeles area. The FBI making the announcement today. According to the FBI, the 4 were allegedly planning coordinated bombing attacks on New Year's Eve using improvised explosive devices targeting 5 separate locations across the Los Angeles area. Joining us live now is Bobby CHACON, a veteran FBI special agent, now retired after an illustrious career with the FBI. He's also an attorney. He's a sought-after expert in criminal and counterterrorism investigations. You see him on national television, and he's joining us live here this afternoon. Bobby CHACON, thank you very much for taking the call here today.
Thanks for having me. Great to be with you.
Likewise, thank you very much. And give us your reaction to this big news that was announced this morning.
Well, unfortunately, my reaction is not surprise or shock, but it's also one of pride in the work that the FBI Los Angeles field office did. That's my old field office. I retired out of that office. And knowing that they were on this group fairly quickly, because this were all very recent developments. If you read the reporting, this all happened within the last month or so. And so this was like an accelerated timeline that these terrorists were on to cause death and destruction on New Year's Eve.
And this group's been described as anti-capitalist, anti-government, pro-Palestinian. Is the FBI and other law enforcement now more vigilant on these matters given global events?
Well, yeah, you have to be, right? I mean, Australia is already under fire for what happened at Bondi Beach over the weekend because they didn't have much of a police presence there. I mean, it's incumbent upon, authorities now, both political and law enforcement, to kind of take everything a lot more serious and forward posture with protection resources that are available to citizens. We have large gatherings during the holidays. It's just the way it is. And those can be targets of terrorists. And we have terrorists in this country, God knows how many. And so, yeah, we're always on guard for these types of things to develop. And, when the FBI got on this rather quickly, great work by them and the U.S. Attorney's Office. I believe there was another arrest for another member of this group was going to stage an attack in New Orleans. And so, they're here. This particular group is kind of a bit off. They have whatever we call it, grievance of the day. They don't like capitalism. They don't like the government. They don't like this. They don't like that. They don't really have one particular ideological narrative, but they just want to cause havoc and death and destruction. And, it's one thing to talk about it online and to get into these chat rooms. It's another to come out here in the desert and start actually assembling and practicing blowing things up in the desert and building these devices, which this group was doing.
Is this more a refined version of Antifa? That was sort of the umbrella description of some of these kind of groups in the past.
Yeah, I mean, this is kind of a Antifa meets Alf meets ISIS. It's like if you read some of their dogma, it's all over the map. It's just the Turtle Island title of their name refers, I think, to the entire U.S. being on stolen land. So it goes back to the indigenous people. But then they also don't like capitalism. They also don't like fossil fuels. There's a whole host of things. The bottom line is they're willing to murder people for their cause. And they were actually taking the steps to do just that, to murder innocent people celebrating New Year's Eve across Los Angeles in just a few weeks. And they were taking affirmative steps, concrete steps to carry out these attacks. They had compiled the devices or the things needed to put these devices together. They were practicing these with these devices. They were videotaped by the FBI doing that from surveillance aircraft, and the FBI knew that they were close to doing this, and you have to move quickly with these groups because for example, you don't know if all the plans you hear are going to happen on New Year's Eve, and then at the last minute they shift and say, "No, let's do it Christmas Eve." So you really have to be on your guard, watching them 24/7. And then when you have enough to charge them with the federal crimes that are going to get them long prison terms, you move in and you use your SWAT teams to take them down.
Since you know how all this works and been around a long time, remember after 9/11, there were special numbers set up if anybody saw something suspicious and that they should call the FBI. How does it work? Do those tips get followed up on aggressively?
Every single one. Yeah, we have. When I retired, they were called guardian leads. Every call that comes in is looked at. Phone calls are made. Interviews are done. They drive out to people's houses. They find them. Like you said, it's that old see something, say something. It not only happens like seeing something, or if you read something online, say something, report it. IC3 is a .gov is a website you can use. You can just call your local FBI office or go on the FBI website. There's reporting links there. And every one of those is followed up on. It's exhaustive. It takes a lot of time and manpower. But there's really no alternative these days, because so often, we have to be right 100% of the time. The bad guys only have to be right once. And so, in this day and age, with the attacks we're seeing every day, it seems, we have to be very vigilant to anyone that's espousing any kind of hateful rhetoric online that could very quickly devolve into actual violence.
In fact, we just heard from our financial analyst. Looks like guns might be a popular item for purchase this holiday season. What about that and any other ideas to better protect yourself these days?
Well, vigilance. I mean, awareness is probably the biggest tool you can have. Situational awareness. Know where you're going. Know the security that's in place. If you're not comfortable with it, don't go, or choose another venue, choose another event to attend. And when you get there, look around for a law enforcement presence. That's what's being criticized now in Australia. There really wasn't any law enforcement presence at a gathering of Jewish people for the holidays. We know there's an international, global anti-Semitic movement now. And so if you're going to a holiday event, whatever your religion or whatever your persuasion, be wise, be aware of your surroundings. Look around, know where your escape routes are, know how to get protection, look for, a security presence. And like I said, if it's not to the level that you're comfortable with, leave or don't go at all. So I mean, I hate to say that because, the terrorists always win, or gain a measure of success when we change our lifestyles. And I'm not advocating people do that. I'm just saying that situational awareness is what we always preach in the FBI. Be aware of your situation, be aware of your surroundings. And if something doesn't feel right, there's a reason that your gut is telling you it doesn't feel right, and make adjustments.
Talk about situational awareness. What do you think of that hero who stopped one of the gunmen there in Australia over the weekend?
I mean, I've watched that video a dozen times, and I can't imagine the brave, the courage it took to that guy could have swung that long gun, right at him, and taken a shot. He was quick, he was decisive, and he took action, and that's a hero. That's exactly what that was at his own peril. And he saved lives. There's no doubt that he saved lives. Again, the question is, why weren't the police that quicker or taking action? But this guy took it on his own courage, at his own peril, and so whipped the gun out of this guy's hand, and like I said, saved lives. So I think that he's a hero, and just like the people on Flight 93. People have to take action, have to be decisive and take action.
God bless him, and thank you very much, Bobby CHACON, veteran FBI special agent, now retired after an illustrious career with the FBI. Wonderful to speak with you here. Thank you very, very much for joining us live here this afternoon.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
Thank you very much. Bobby CHACON live with us here on Mottek On Money on 790 KABC.
Looking for the perfect gift for the soccer fan in your life? Visit store.ussoccer.com and shop official U.S. Soccer merch. Celebrate the season and show your U.S. Soccer fandom with a gift from store.ussoccer.com.
The United States Soccer Federation presents the U.S. Soccer Podcast.
A chance to show people a little bit behind the curtain. Kling, what are we in for?
Such a fun time, so much energy, and you get to actually see people react to the storytelling.
We cover a wide range of topics.
The whole reason we started was we loved playing when we were kids.
I mean, I still got that spark in me.
There you go. But I don't know how you can leave not being a bigger fan.
The U.S. Soccer Podcast. Goal for goal! Follow and listen on your favorite platform.
Heavy hearts around the world as Hanukkah begins following the horrific anti-Semitic attack in Australia over the weekend. 15 people were killed when two gunmen targeted Jewish people attending a Hanukkah event. The victims include a 10-year-old girl, a British-born rabbi, a retired police officer, and a Holocaust survivor. Meanwhile, the effort to stamp out anti-Semitism continues in the Los Angeles area following an appalling incident last week when pro-Palestinian protesters disrupted an event at the Wilshire Boulevard Temple. Meanwhile, a few more California colleges have settled anti-Semitic complaints. Joining us live now is Rabbi Abraham Cooper, Associate Dean and Director of Global Social Action for the Simon Wiesenthal Center and Museum of Tolerance in West Los Angeles. Rabbi Cooper, thank you very much for taking the call here this afternoon.
Thank you, Frank. But unfortunately, you haven't fulfilled your promise to have me on once when we have good news.
That's heartbreaking. That's heartbreaking. Thank you for taking the call during the Festival of Lights when the unthinkable has just happened again. Rabbi, tell us your thoughts here on what's happened.
Well, there's quite a bit. I think we have to start with Bondi Beach in Sydney, Australia, because this is part of a global war against the Jewish people. In all likelihood, it looks again like Iran may be behind this particular act. We'll know a lot more. But what we have is a failure of political leadership, weak leaders. The current Prime Minister, Albanese, in Australia, unfortunately, he joined with Macron and others in the midst of the war with Hamas when Israelis alive and dead were still being held hostage. They recognized the Palestinian state. They never held accountable the perpetrators of previous crimes, including the firebombing of the synagogues in Melbourne. The message that they were giving to the evildoers, to the terrorists and their supporters, is we're not going to hold you accountable. And they essentially allowed the Jews of Australia to twist and to win. A year ago, I handed to the Australian ambassador in Washington a letter which informed them that the Wiesenthal Center a year ago was putting Australia on its travel advisory list because we were not convinced that Jews would be safe even traveling to this fantastic country. A year later, here we are in the aftermath. And the targeting by the pro-Hamas and other extremists around the world of Jewish communities and the diaspora, it's amazing because you're looking at Melbourne, you're looking at Sydney, you're looking at Toronto, you're looking at Montreal, great metropolitan cities in which survivors of the Holocaust were welcomed. They brought up, they added to the quality of life that generations come. The quietest, nicest cities in these countries. And today, Jews can't walk out in the street without worrying about violence. So, we have a different perspective because we're looking at things globally. And what we're urging Australia and the UK and France and Canada to do is allow your police, instruct your police and intelligence services to disrupt the food chain of terrorism that is allowed to fester in Western democracies before it's too late. Because, as you know, Frank, it starts often with the Jews, it never ends with the Jews. So what happened to our wonderful friends, the Chabad emissaries, who are really the spiritual guides for Jews and others all over the world, gentle, wonderful people here in LA and around the world. You have an event that has nothing to do with any military or strategic decision of the state of Israel. It's all about spiritual values, remembering history, etc. And that's exactly what was targeted. So anytime someone tells you there's a difference between anti-Zionism and anti-Semitism, not anymore, not in 2025. That's a big tragedy. Now, as there are developments in terms of the universities, which have unfortunately, starting October 8th, 2023, were sort of the main platform of spreading the verbal attacks against Israel and the Jewish people, slanders. And what we're discovering is that the issue is not always so much the students, it's more about faculty and some of the administrators. And so when you read about UC Berkeley and Pomona College, where they had to cut deals with the federal government because they were violating U.S. law, and apologized to certain students because they were not protected by the university. These are symbolic gestures. I think if it's followed up in a more fundamental way, perhaps things will change on university campuses. But, every 4 years you get a new crop of students, and the people who come out with very negative views about Israel, very often also absorbing anti-American rhetoric from professors who originated in Iran, in other countries overseas. We have the funding into the billions of dollars by Qatar. It's a mess. So we're grateful that some symbolic steps have been reached. We're very, very concerned for the physical safety. By the way, not only of the Jewish community, we have Christmas and New Year's coming up. Across Europe, from the Eiffel Tower, Germany, and other places, they're canceling Christmas events because of fears of terrorism. And the terrorists, Hamas, Hezbollah, Iranians, the rest of them, Qataris, they go after the Jews first. But if you read what they say about Christians and what they're doing to Christians in Nigeria and in Syria, etc., around the world, we're basically all in it together. And maybe my final point would be the announcement today, thank God, that the FBI thwarted planned terrorist attacks by extreme pro-Palestinian group that was planning on at least 4 bombs going off in Los Angeles on New Year's Eve. We've got the Olympics. We've got the World Cup coming in 2026. We've got Super Bowl coming the following year. LA is a juicy target, God forbid, for more terrorism, more attacks. And the only answer, especially this time of year in December, we have Christmas, we have Hanukkah, we have the New Year. It's a time that we actually come together with friends and family. We have to learn how to stand together, because if we don't, our enemies are going to make much, much bigger problems, and not only for one particular faith group, but really, I think, shaking the foundations potentially of this great city.
Rabbi Cooper, the first candles of Hanukkah were lit last night. What is your message here to Los Angeles as Hanukkah has started?
Look, my message is what we did last night is we lit the first candle. My wife read the Hebrew names of those people who are fighting for their lives in hospitals in Sydney. My daughter visiting from Israel, she went to an outdoor concert in Los Angeles, a Jewish concert celebrating Hanukkah. And the good news is it was packed. And that's really the answer to these threats. We should not cower. LA doesn't have to change its greatness. It has to stand up for its greatness. And for the Jewish people, it's been our fate that we look at those lights. It gives us more strength. But, you reach a point, especially when you have even great-grandchildren, we kind of ask and say, are we ever going to get to the time where we can just focus on the positive and on the great potential that every human brings into this world? And to answer that question fully and honestly, That's not a Jewish question. It's not a Muslim question. It's a human challenge.
Rabbi, thank you very much for sharing your thoughts with us here on Hanukkah. That is the Rabbi Abraham Cooper, live with us here on Mottek On Money on 790 KABC.
Family Matters amplifies the loudest and the proudest political voices in the Black community today.
What's up, guys? I'm CJ Pearson. There's so many incredible perspectives here in the Black community that you're going to hear from each and every week. This is exactly what the mainstream media was missing.
Because faith matters, country matters, and family matters.
And actually talk to the people at the forefront of this change in the community. And by the way, it's no small number. It's growing every single day. That's why this moment matters.
Family Matters with CJ Pearson. Follow and listen on your favorite platform.